I want to go speak in Columbus, Ohio. I want to go to Louisville, Kentucky. I want to go to Owensboro, Kentucky. I want to sit in a room and I want them to have to tell me that I'm not a human being. And I want them to hear the stories about what our meetings look like. How beautiful it is to walk down Market Street with a bunch of people that don't necessarily look like you. How great it is to walk into a building and see all kinds of people and not be afraid.
Welcome to the Commonwealth Club World Affairs of California. I'm Michelle Meow, a member of the Board of Governors for the club and also producer of the Michelle Meow Show, which some of you have been here for. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I think like most of you have been trying to find my words, and so I don't have much other than I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. I feel so lucky and privileged and honored that I get to be with some of the most incredible human beings in the world who are doing work day in and day out for all of us.
Thank you again to Michelle Meow and the Commonwealth Club for having us and for hosting these conversations during this time. I'm a little out of breath carrying those chairs, girl. I am, to say that I'm happy to be here might be maybe a little bit of a misstatement, but there's nowhere I'd rather be right now than in this room of people with this group of folks that are on stage, because I think, when we're at home alone, thinking of, going through our feeds on Instagram and seeing all the craziness that is happening in our country right now, it can get really draining, it can get really scary, but it's really comforting for me to know that we have a whole bunch of champions who are out there fighting every day to ensure that here in San Francisco and here in California, that we continue to lead the way when it comes to LGBTQI plus equality. So thank you all for being here. I think I wanted to start this discussion with, an easy question of how the heck did we get here? I feel like that's a question that we're all thinking and people have their own theories about it, but can you talk a little bit about how we all got here? Amani, you smiled the biggest, so you're gonna have to take this one.
Oh my goodness. Such a pleasure to be here. Thank you everyone for coming out and spending your evening with us. I will say, I've heard a lot of things about how we've gotten here, and I think there's often an urge in a moment like this to figure out where did we go wrong, or rather, how did you get us here? And that doesn't help us. And I think in this moment, rather than thinking about how we got here, I guess what I want to think about is what is the best way we can handle this moment. And I think that part is really important because there is a strategy. There are things to learn. I think we have learned some different things about our country and the people that we share space with. And we have to think about what is our strategy about making sure that we can keep everyone safe. And I think that's what I'm thinking about right now. What can we do to keep people safe? We often find ourselves in situations where a lot of my work is very often talking to people that think a lot like me. And I think something that's really important is that we learn ways to talk to folks that don't yet think like us, because I think that's what the work is, And in this moment, I want to think about what is a strategy, not for just talking to people like us, but how do we get in rooms so that we are changing hearts and minds? Because we're in a place right now where our wins are actually going to come from convincing people that they think like us. And that's a hard thing to do, but also we're right, and we're going to all be better when that happens. So I think we should go into this with confidence. So anyway, that's what I will start with.
I guess I would add that I completely agree. I mean, it does, in this moment, it doesn't help us to really think through what might have gone wrong. But I will offer that I don't think it comes as a surprise that we have all been advocating so hard over time for the things that we love and we care about and we're passionate about in the social justice movements that we are engulfed by every day. What we have done differently, however, is that one side has been united by a common cause, their hate for us, the hate for the things that we stand for, how we live, how we breathe, and they have been very calculated in arriving at a moment where they're united by that one thing, the ability to tear down everything that we have fought for. And where we have perhaps not gone wrong, I think our movements have done a lot of really amazing things, but we have done it in a very fragmented way and often at the expense of one movement or another. And so now more than ever, I would echo what our colleagues from the first panel said, is that we can't afford to move forward unless we are in lockstep. And that means every movement, not just LGBT versus HIV versus immigrants' rights. We have to find ways to communicate and collaborate better. And we have to find ways to learn from what others who have dealt with extremist environments around the world have every day. And that means finding trust in ourselves, finding trust in the people around us, cultivating the trust circles that we know in our own movements, in our own lives, across movements that we can, figuring out how to let go of the things that we cannot change. That is very hard, and that means letting go. It means grieving. It means being okay with grieving, but then it means as soon as we are ready, finding our pathway forward and finding the pathway that resonates with us. As individuals, we don't have to have all the solutions. I lead an organization. I will be honest, I don't have all the answers, but we can figure it out together.
I don't want to force anyone else to comment on this question. I think one thing that I will say is, I think it's the reason that I wanted to start out with that question is that there are people that are making assumptions about how we got here, right? And we have heard on TV, people blaming trans people blaming things like immigration, people who, even within our own community who are like, I think we've just asked for too much and we've gone too far, right? I mean, that is something that I have heard. So I want to name that those things are happening. And yet I think what we don't often talk enough about is the fact that a lot of people did not show up to vote. Right? Like, we saw that Trump did not win by that many more votes than he got defeated by last time. And so there were a significant amount of people, most of them who are registered Democrats, who stayed home. And so what are we not doing right? How are we not getting those people to the polls? I think is a really important part of the answer here. I also think that part of the way that we got here is the outsized weight that money has in our elections. I think that both parties, unfortunately, have in some ways prioritized big business and money. And we've seen in this last election that the Democrats, kind of pandered more to the center right. And it didn't work, right? And then even when we think about the way in which we receive information, right? The algorithms that send us our Instagram and TikTok feeds, and the place from which many people, especially young people, are getting their news, the way that they are built and they are not regulated, and they prioritize monetization and what gets people to look at it the longest. And so it's all about rage and anger and fear and not about truth. So I think in so many ways, money has really gotten us here, the prioritization of money above people's needs and the value of humanity.
Thank you, honey, and thank you, my fellow panelists. I guess what I will say is, we got to figure this out. I feel like we missed the mark. I think when my husband and I woke up on Wednesday, the realization was that homophobia, misogyny, racism, transphobia has been with us forever, and we haven't figured it out. And we thought we were making moves, and we are. We are making moves, but yet it wasn't enough. And I feel like we didn't do enough. And I think we thought we were. It was the same thing. We weren't linking the issues together. We still work in silos. I do believe that. It took us years just for the HIV community to actually bridge with the LGBTQ community. It took years just for queer people of color to be seen in HIV and LGBTQ spaces. And that's the work that we still need to do. And then beyond that, it's what my fellow dear friends and colleagues are saying. It's linking these movements. It's not just about these movements. It's about women's reproductive movements. It's about civil rights organizations, about anti-poverty, voting rights. We have to do that kind of work together. And I feel like we've been beaten down so much, and we try to organize, but we're not going to the next step. And we gotta do that.
I'm going to sound just like Imani, but with a little different twist. Since Tuesday night, I'm from one of those red states. I don't know if you noticed, but I'm white. And, I'm always trying to understand how my people could be so angry and not treat us as human beings. And what's the right message? How do we reach them? Because I saw some attempts by the Democratic Party, like the video where they were suggesting that wives could vote against the interest of their husband and not vote for Trump. And, that sounds, I'm sure some smart people in a room thought that was smart. Women from Kentucky did not want to hear Democrats tell them that they now have permission to go into the voting booth and vote for who they want. That sounded what they say about us being elitist, and we live in California, and we live these magic places, but we don't know how they live. I will agree with Imani. I'm tired of speaking in front of people that agree with me. Everywhere I go in the Bay Area, the crowd, they might be not educated on trans matters, but they wouldn't be there if they didn't have some kind of feeling that they support us. I want to go speak in Columbus, Ohio. I want to go to Louisville, Kentucky. I want to go to Owensboro, Kentucky. I want to sit in a room, and I want them to have to tell me that I'm not a human being. And I want them to hear the stories about what our meetings look like, how beautiful it is to walk down Market Street with a bunch of people that don't necessarily look like you, how great it is to walk into a building and see all kinds of people and not be afraid. And they don't know those feelings. Look, a lot of them are just evil people. I'm not gonna, but there are some of them. There are some of them that are having the same struggles we are. They're trying to feed their families. They don't have enough money to send their kids to school. There's no chance that their kids are going to have better lives than they did. The factories are gone. My stepfather and father signed on the dotted line, and if they showed up every day for 30 years, they could raise a family. That culture and society is gone, and they're afraid. And every time in this country when poor working class people are afraid, they divide us with race, misogyny, transphobia, and it works every time. Why are we not countering that issue? We have smart people. Why are we not figuring that out?
I want to pull that thread just a little bit further to say that there is also going to have to be a lot of strategy in thinking how we do use people who are on the opposite side of the issue to figure out how to navigate the next 4+ years. One of the organizations that Lance and I are deeply connected to, the National Minority AIDS Council, NMAC, where he serves as board chair, newly board chair, and AIDS United, where I chair their public policy council, have recently hired, over the last few years, a Republican strategy firm, which is painful to sit through. I mean, it is painful to hear their strategy, but they have been helping us trying to figure out how to navigate hard conversations with Congress that have gotten us through even the last several years of gridlock, and will be even more important as we think about how we navigate difficult legislative attacks on our rights and our dignity and the road ahead. And you have to enter those conversations with an open mind and then go back to the table and figure out what are the nuggets from that painful conversation that we're going to take and use, and what is just the rhetoric. But I think that we're going to have to rethink the entire playbook of how we operate.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that communication and messaging is something that is really important, and honestly, something that the left has had a problem with. I think that we, feel so strongly that we are right, but it is not enough to be right. You actually have to convince the other side of your argument, of your fight. We have to humanize ourselves, and in order to do that, the message has to get through. And right now, it's not getting through to enough people. We have such a great panel of folks right now representing all different parts of our community, from health services to legal services and community services. I wanted to ask you all, I think, what are we most concerned about over the next couple of years when it comes to trans rights or gender affirming care, HIV and AIDS services?
A lot. I'll start briefly to say that at San Francisco AIDS Foundation, we operate both a set of support groups for trans and gender nonconforming folks, as well as a trans care program out of our Magnet Clinic in the Castro. We partner with several other trans-led initiatives for young people and through city initiatives. And my worry is that at some point we're going to be told, here are your federal dollars, or you can keep providing these services to a group of your community that you care about and love. And we're going to have to make very hard decisions about the broader impact of our nonprofits and our mission and our ability to serve others, and be very creative about how we can do both, because the answer has to be that we will continue to do both. But that has very serious implications. I've spent the last 2 weeks working with my policy staff and leaders around the country trying to analyze the federal funding landscape, to understand how we might repurpose dollars that are coming in from foundations, corporations, and others that will continue to stand behind us. But I think there are real implications for funding that we're going to really have to think about, especially with the target on our back here in California moving forward. And then there's just a lot of logistics that our staff have really been thinking through. I think we're fortunate to be in California and have done a lot to create states' rights for the trans community, but folks are going to need to travel. They're going to need to do a lot of things that aren't in California, and there are real things that we need to think about: documentation, IDs, a variety of things that will have to help folks navigate even more so in the years ahead.
I can add on. I think all of it is at risk. I feel like we've known this. We've known that they've been coming for gender affirming care for years. But we've seen it happen, and so now we just know, we have to know that is, and especially for minors, trans affirming, gender affirming care for minors is at the tip of the spear. That is the bullseye. And immigrants, Nicole, what you said, immigration and trans youth, there's that. And then I do think what we know, because we've seen it for the past years, is the undoing of the Affordable Care Act, which gives us across the country for Medicaid expanded states the fullness of our health care, to realize the fullness of our health and wellness for our queer, trans, for folks who are living with HIV, all of that. And all of that is at risk. It's coming undone. We saw it happen with this Braidwood versus Becerra decision in Texas that's dismantling. It's going to happen. This preventative care that is going to get stripped away. And preventative care is about reproductive rights. It's about PrEP. It's about HIV. It's about saving us in many ways. And that coming undone, we will see. And then so in California, what I can see is then, of course, our undocumented folks who are covered by Medi-Cal right now. We have everyone covered by Medi-Cal. And that is going to be a target right now, to know that if undocumented folks are the target, then actually California and the beautiful, amazing fullness of our Medi-Cal system is at risk. And we have to do everything in our power to figure this out. And again, it's not just us. It's about everyone in our state. It's about joining together. It's about figuring this out with all the leaders from across the state, in Sacramento, community-based leaders, but government leaders, elected officials, all of that. We have to figure out how we're going to do that. And we're starting to, I do think. The issue right now is like, we can't wait. We got to do this right now, right? We don't have any time to wait anymore. The writing has been on the wall, and we have to get to work.
I would say the thing that comes up for me is I'm thinking about Scrimeti. So we are a legal organization, and so Scrimeti will be the first time that really an issue specifically talking about transgender folks is taken at the Supreme Court. And this is going to be talking about medical care. And basically the question before the court will be, are trans people treated differently in regards to medical care? And they, of course, are, because this is absolutely ridiculous. But one of the things that I like to talk about, I'm not a lawyer and I lead a law firm, so I think it's really important. And I tell my team all the time, I'm a regular smart person and I'm part of our community.
And a
So
social worker. I mean, don't,
Thank you, social
workers.
workers. But we have to understand what's happening here. And I think this is an important distinction, because so often we start using language and we say the same things, but we don't always know what we mean by the same things. And so when we're talking about what this means for the type of care that trans folks are getting, I want to be really clear. The care that trans folks are getting is care that every single major medical association says is absolutely important. And this isn't easy to get. It's not some special care. It's not some magical special care. It is regular care that a lot of people get, because you know who gets it more than trans people is everyone else. And we don't talk about that, but to have puberty blockers, like, straight cis people get puberty blockers all the time, and we don't think anything about that. There's about 1% of the population who goes through something called precocious puberty, and that means that they start puberty early. It happens to about 1% of people, so most of us don't hear anything about it. And it's easily fixed by just putting someone on puberty blockers, and then when they're going through puberty, and like when they're 12 or 13, then they're taken off. These are completely safe. That would be the same thing for trans folks. We know that anyone that doesn't have enough testosterone in any gender, that we can go and get that anytime. We know if someone is going through menopause or perimenopause, that they can have hormone replacement therapy with absolutely no problem. So when this exact same care is taken away from trans people, it is specifically to try to marginalize and alienate trans people. And that's what we need to think about in this moment. Because, you were talking earlier about there are people around us saying that we are asking for too much, or like, we're not asking for too much, y'all. Like, we have to fight for our community. That is what we are supposed to be doing. And that's what we're seeing right now. We have to fight for our community. This isn't too much. People have to be able to have medical care. And the fact that we are thinking about who can have medical care, that is something that goes in front of a court, that's something we need to think about. Because I think often people say, well, that really doesn't affect me. But it does. If anyone can't have their medically necessary health care, then it's possible that you can't have your medically necessary health care. And that's how we have to start thinking about this. And in this moment, this is what it means to work intersectionally. And that means that we have to find folks that are experiencing the highest levels of marginalization, and we have to concentrate there. And that is where we need to put our efforts right now, because we know that our opponents are absolutely coming after trans people, trans kids, but also trans adults. This taking away this medical care isn't just for young people. It is for everyone that's trans. And so we really need to think about that and make sure that we are prioritizing people that are experiencing the highest levels of marginalization. And that's what it means to stay in community with folks.
I love how she always does a better job of saying why NCLR does what they do for trans people, because it ties into everyone, and you always do that so well. 3 years ago, at this question, I just would not have spoke, because I don't provide services for anyone. And sometimes I'm in discussions about budgets and financing, and I feel like, we just do this parade and a party, and maybe they're doing important work and providing services for our community. But I know now, after 3 years, that our platform, that San Francisco Pride takes care of our community here in San Francisco and the Bay Area. And being together on that day, and what we mean when we show up and when we work with your organizations to make sure we're putting up what you're doing on our platform, those are important. But I think now more than ever, we're going to wake up almost every day, especially trans people, and our feeds, that algorithm's going to say in Indiana today, they cut off care for trans. We're going to read something like that every day. And I used to, when I was in the other world, I didn't think about things like that, but now I know what that does to me. And I know that here in the Bay Area, when we wake up and we face that, well, I'm going to see Tyler that day, and he's going to tell me it's going to be okay. But the trans kid in Indiana, he is not. She is not. They are not. They are not going to encounter anybody that day that's going to tell them that it's going to be okay. But they might on their social media or TV, if anybody watches TV anymore. They are going to know that San Francisco Pride and this community is one place where we're not standing for what's going on out there. They're going to know that we're taking care of each other and that we're here and we're not going anywhere. And so it is important, and I think we know that more than ever this year. Our board is already getting ready. We know they're going to be watching to see what we do. And we're going to show up, we're going to be defiant, but we're going to have joy. We're going to find this and be with each other, and that's what's important.
Absolutely. And I absolutely believe that San Francisco Pride has a huge role to play in the months and years to come, because we are going to need to see that symbol of hope shine bright for people across this country. So thank you, everyone here, for the work that you're doing. We have a few minutes left for another question. So I think I want to ask at this time, is there a seed of hope in all of this for you? We've talked a lot about the challenges, the things that we're most afraid of, but what are the seeds of hope that you're taking away from this?
The seed of hope is here tonight. I started working at 7 o'clock on election night and saw the first results. I started writing our response. And I've just been surrounded by people that love me ever since that election. And I met with this woman named Marcy yesterday in the Castro, and she had her notepad out. She was writing notes furiously, and we were talking about what we were going to do. And I never felt so like I belong to something bigger than me, and it's not just trans people. It's all our community. And it's been hard these past few years to set at the head of San Francisco Pride, and there's been divisions in our community that hurt. Like, it really hurts to be and then hear that somebody's not going to show up at something you're trying to give to people, and it's hurt. And I think if any hope for me, as I see that maybe we can do some repairing within our community so that we can go do what we're supposed to, and I'm looking forward to that work.
Suzanne gives me hope. Hani and Tyler and Imani give me hope. The day after, Wednesday after election, I was not hopeful. I did write the email to my staff because I was concerned about my team at San Francisco Community Health Center. And then I went into the office there at our health center, and literally a few hours later, I got word that one of our nurses who is trans had to field a call from a hateful person claiming to be our patient, threatening them, saying they were coming after them, they were MAGA, they were all this, and it shook us to our core. And then what I saw is our whole community at San Francisco Community Health Center embrace our team, love on our team. We came together in ways that we always do, but it meant so much more in that moment on Wednesday. And that made me hopeful that our trans folks, our team, and we have many folks across our several sites at our shelter at Tame and Booten and our Trans Thrive Center and our headquarters at Polk Street, but we took care of each other. And my team is still at work every single day. They never stopped. And so this gives me hope. I will say that, Imani and I get to work at creating change, and every year we assemble executive directors, queer executive directors from organizations across the country. We probably work with 100+ people every year, and it is a beautiful room of incredibly talented, smart, ambitious, inspiring folks, many of whom are super young. They're queer, trans, people of color, and they are leading our movement. And so that is giving me hope right now. That is out there, we're connected, and we are going to fight like hell. We are.
42 years ago, at right around this time, a one-office room opened in the Castro. It was the first HIV hotline that soon thereafter became San Francisco AIDS Foundation. And we formed out of a moment of fear and anger and uncertainty, but we formed because community came together when the government left us behind, when they didn't care about the pathway forward, when they didn't care about our lives, when they didn't care about our rights and our dignity. And it has been community that has gotten us through to such great heights. I mean, this past year, San Francisco only saw 133 new HIV diagnoses. We never thought we would arrive at this moment. And while I'm not going to make light that the road ahead is not going to be difficult. Make no mistake, it is going to be difficult, and we are going to have to fight, and we're going to have to be united. What I do know is that we have faced incredibly difficult political climates before, and what got us through was being united. What got us through was community, was loving one another, was the communication and the support. So what gives me hope is being the CEO of San Francisco AIDS Foundation, of being an organization that formed in a moment of grief and crisis and has achieved such amazing things throughout that difficult journey, and that I have such amazing colleagues that even on the hardest of days I can reach out to or share moments like this, and I know that we will find a way.
You know, I would just say that there are more of us that believe in equality for folks. I know that we're saying that that's not what folks believe in, but that's not what everyone is voting for. I think there's a way that we interpret it that way, but that's not it. And we know that, you know, there are so many studies that show us just across the aisle that people want protections for LGBTQ people. We know that this is something that's true. And so right now, I've been calling it, this is our hero chapter. This is the time when you look back in the story, they're going to be looking at folks that are doing this work right now in this moment and say, what were we doing? Who are we looking at? And let's remember, you know, I was raised by people with a very different experience in the world. And I'm not going to say that we have been here before, but I'm not going to say that my parents didn't have a much more difficult time than I'm having in this moment. So we have folks that we can look to. We're doing civil rights work, and we have a civil rights movement. We have spaces that we can look to. There are books there we can read. There are people that we can learn from that have been in positions like this. You know, this is a really interesting time to start doing something with our movement. You know, before, when people were looking at civil rights, what they were realizing is that they were writing these policies. They wanted to enact these things, and then they realized that they didn't have people that were studying civil rights that would be able to roll them out. And so they encouraged people to go to school to become lawyers. And we can do the same sort of thing. Right now, I'm building a program at NCLR, and it's going to be really small, but it's going to be how we're starting a more intentional way in how we're doing our pro bono work. Because I think that in 10 years, it's going to look a whole lot different. If we're in a situation like this, I want to set the organization up so that we're better able to take care of our folks. And that's what we're doing. We are in our hero chapter right now. We don't see it, but when people look back in this moment, they're going to say, what did people do when their backs were against the wall? What would people do when they didn't realize what could be in front of them? And that's going to be what we're doing. Our community is the strongest, this is the most powerful thing that we have. This is the only thing that's ever won anyway. And we have that. That is what we are going to do. This is what we're going to move forward. And we're going to take care of our folks like we always have. we're on the side of justice. We are going to win this. We just have to figure out how we're going to show up when things get harder. And so while this is scary, this is also really exciting because we have an opportunity to make a mark on the world, to legitimately make it better, and we're going to be able to see that difference because we care about ourselves so much.
I feel like that's a perfect way to end this, so we're going to end it there, and we're, I think, having time to open it up for questions.
We will take a couple questions.
My question is very simple. I mean, this thing about transgender and transgender liberation, that we were here before. I started transitioning in 1977. That was not even the word transgender. I'm one of the people that actually fight and litigate and did a lot of activism about Tom Waddell's clinic. Those doctors come to us on the streets as sex workers asking us how this thing works. What are you guys taking? What are you putting inside your bodies? So we were here before, right here, way, way back. So I know, I understand about strategy, stuff like that, but to me, as an old transgender, ancestor transgender, makes no difference. Because I would thrive, I will be silent, and I will be victorious at the end. Thank you.
Before I share my question, I just wanted to share a brief statistic because that will definitely help with this question. Before this Trans Day of Remembrance, we have lost 350 trans members of our community this year. 93% of them were Black or brown trans folks. 46% were sex workers. And so I'm just here to ask, what are we doing to protect our vulnerable community members who are already on the margins of an already marginalized community? What are we doing to protect our sex workers, people who use drugs, people who are experiencing homelessness, and the people who are actively going to face this attack on our community while we sit here in privilege and are able to share our thoughts and ideas in this room? I love the fact that I'm here being able to listen to y'all, but how are we protecting the people who are actively dealing with these discriminations?
I mean, I think that's a very big question. I can talk to a couple concrete things that we're doing at the Office of Trans Initiatives. I mean, one thing, we have one of our staff members, Shane Zaldivar, is here in the audience. She does actually trainings with a whole bunch of organizations to ensure that, and city departments to ensure that they are culturally competent and can serve trans people. So in order to increase access for those people who are trans, who are homeless, who are suffering from addiction, that they can receive the culturally appropriate services that they deserve. In addition to that, right now we're working very hard on the Ending Trans Homelessness Initiative here in San Francisco. We have some community partners who are part of that initiative here with us today, and we really want to make homelessness for trans people functionally over, in the next 5 years. So we are working very hard to ensure that we're providing more rental subsidies, that we now have the Tamon Booten Navigation Center for trans people, and we've worked with organizations like Lion Martin to do guaranteed income pilots. So there are many, many different things that we are trying to do in order to address those very needs.
Yeah, I would just quickly add that through many of our organizations, we're providing access to social support and navigation and care services in the best ways that we can with the funding that we have. And we're thinking very hard about what increased partnership can look like so that if our funding is under attack, we can stay linked together and we can continue to operate in the best ways possible. There's been several new initiatives over the last 2 years to launch a series of health access points across the community with very intentional focus on communities that have been traditionally furthest from access and opportunity. So there's a youth health access point and one for people who use substances and one for trans folks and one for a variety of communities that we're really trying to invest better resources. And then just to say that San Francisco AIDS Foundation has throughout our programmatic surface always really dedicated our time and energy to partnerships around public policy and advocacy, both on the local, state, and federal level. And so we continue to advocate for the rights and dignity and access for all of these communities every day. But we're also very open to hearing from folks all the time about areas that we can strengthen that work. And the best way that I can encourage folks to get involved in a variety of those issues is to go to San Francisco AIDS Foundation's website and look up our HIV Advocacy Network and get involved through the updates that we can provide there or ways that you can mobilize.
Thank you, Tyler. Yeah, I mean, and you know, AIDS Foundation and San Francisco Community Health Center work so closely together, and my colleague Xander knows this, but you know, it's folks like Xander actually who are working on the front lines, who get all of this and are parts of these communities. We hire from the community, the sex worker community, the substance use community, the homeless community, the HIV community, the trans community, and so at San Francisco Community Health Center, like Honey was saying, you know, we're operating the Taman Bhutan Navigation Center. We have 64 beds filled. We're trying to get more beds in there so that trans and gender nonconforming folks have a place to lay their head when they need it. Right now, if that happens, we can get somebody in there. We have Trans Thrive, our community center up on Pine Street, that is a safe space, a resource space run by trans folks that is there. It's a resource center. It's a beautiful space so that folks can get anything and everything they need. We work alongside Tyler's organization, the AIDS Foundation, because it's not just about that. We have to make sure that we're going above and beyond. So our health center provides gender affirming care, medical, dental, behavioral, but beyond that, really, it's actually right now in San Francisco, we can't take anything for granted. We work closely with Honey and your team at the Office of Trans Initiatives, but we have a new mayor-elect coming in. We have actually a new board of supervisors in D5 and in D3. And so D3 is where our Trans Thrive Center is. D5 is where our Polk Street headquarters is. And actually, we have a lot of work to do to make sure that we are, all of our elected officials in San Francisco are by our side and protecting the communities we care about.
Yeah, and I would have, 3 years ago, I would have been, I'm not sure, but Xander, you know that we have used our platform. We have recognized people in the sex work industry. We've given them a platform. We've made them grand marshals. We are a sex positive queer community organization, and we do take that as a responsibility to make sure that we have people on our board that represent everyone in the community and that they're bringing issues like that and honoring people that we should.
And I would just add as well, you know, actively we work to decriminalize sex work, making things more accessible to everyone. Some of the work, you know, the cases that we take, we try very hard to take the type of cases that not everyone will take. And that means, you know, a lot of times there's a way where folks try to find a plaintiff that they feel like will just be really palatable to someone. And that's not something that's for us. Like, we really try to make sure that it doesn't help us to get to LGBTQ equality if the precedents we set don't work for people because they're also experiencing racism. And so, you know, a lot of our cases are the first of its kind. You know, one of our cases, the first person received gender affirming care while in prison, and that was one of our clients. So we actively work to make sure that we're highlighting the most underrepresented. And again, what that means is that we have to find the folks that are experiencing the highest levels of marginalization and to lift those folks up. And I think we should challenge our organizations to do that, but also to recognize that our organizations are being led by different people too, and we're doing different things. And I think that's something that's really exciting as well.
Thank you all so much. Let's give a big round of applause for Lance Thoma, Imani Rupert Gordon, Dr. Tyler Tamir, Suzanne Ford of San Francisco Pride, and of course, Honey Mahogany, which I always never really give all your titles because it's an incredibly long list. But thank you for all that you do.